Where do we seek a rescue in case of an acute emergency? Well, many call the emergency number like 911 or 112 in Europe or 999 in England, but there is something strange with these emergency numbers. First of all, 911, 9/11 is etched in everyone's memory. 9/11, September 11th, was the day that the two planes flew into the Twin Towers and they collapsed, and there was a big fire cloud, and it was a day of calamity, and the whole world was looking to it. So it was a very bad day. 911, 9/11, it is etched in everyone's memory, and it was about planes and fire. Well, remember this, because there is something strange with the other numbers as well. The other number, the emergency number in Europe and other countries, is 112. And there is also a date connected to this. The order of dates in Europe is a bit different because you first say the day and then the month. So 112 is the February 11th. And on February 11th, 3 major plane crashes occurred in different years. The first occurred in 1992. On February 11th, a fighter jet crashed in Hengelo in the Netherlands. And it crashed on buildings in an area where people lived. Luckily, there were no dead persons, but this fighter jet crashed, and that is a very unique accident in Holland. It never happens like that. And then in 2014, a big military airplane, a Hercules, crashed in Algeria, and 77 soldiers died in that plane crash. And in Algeria, the emergency number is also 112. So on February 112, this Hercules plane crashed with 77 soldiers being dead. And then in 2018, a plane crashed near to Moscow, with 71 dead persons as a result. So 71 dead persons with a plane crash at Moscow. And in Russia, at Moscow, the emergency number is also 112. So February 11th. So there were 3 plane crashes on February 11th, and there was 1 plane crash or 2 in the Twin Towers on 9/11, on 9/11 in America. So it's all related to planes and air crashes. And then the number 999 in England. That was the very first emergency number in the world. England, as first country, proposed an emergency number. That was 999. It was proposed in 1937 after there was a fire in London in which 5 women were burned. So after this fire in London, the first emergency number arose, and it was 999. Well, many people would immediately think about 666. 999 is a reversal of the 666, and it's a very important number. It is the number of the Antichrist or Satan in the Bible. So 666. Well, remind this, it is about 666. Well, is there also a date connected to this in England? A date of calamity? Yes, there is. In 1666, London, the city of London, completely burned down. There was a great big fire in that year, and the whole city of London burned down. So it was a day of calamity like that of the Twin Towers, but then in England. So the year 1666 was known as a year of calamity on London and England, and it had to do with fire. So in all the cases with the emergency numbers, we see airplanes and fire. When the airplanes hit the Twin Towers, there were fireballs. So it's about planes and fire. So that shows us that these dates are spiritually like hijacked. There is something with it spiritually. These numbers are playing out in dates, and they are playing out in crashing airplanes and in fireballs. And when we look closely into the number 911, there is also the 6 in it, the 9, the reversed 6. That was like pointing to the hijacked planes. And then the 1 and the 1, the two letters, numbers 1, were standing like the Twin Towers that were hit by the planes. So it is like those numbers are hijacked. It is in a spiritual sense, these numbers are not free. Well, it is not for nothing that the emergency number came out of England. England invented the emergency number. And England also has a strong connection, in all times has a strong connection with the occult. The main lodge of Freemasonry is in London. And also King Charles of England is very much connected to occult rituals, which he performs even with many leaders from the nations. And there are many, many occult buildings and rituals, demonic buildings and rituals in England. So England has a focus on the occult. And exactly in this nation, the emergency number arose. The first emergency number, 999. Well, that poses us to a question. The question is, where do we seek our help or rescue in a situation of acute emergency? Do we seek our help with people? Do we seek our help with the demonic? Or maybe in another place? Well, and then there's something very strange. I lately saw this. In my Dutch Bible, it will not be like that in your Bible, but in my Dutch Bible, it reads on page 911, there's Psalm 107. 107. Psalm 107. And that psalm is exactly showing us what is the heavenly emergency number. Because Psalm 107 is about all kinds of acute emergencies. And the refrain that is repeating, the verse that is repeated over and over again is the verse, "But then they cried out to Jehovah in their distress, and he brought them out of their fears." They cried out to the God of Israel in their distress, and he brought them out of their fears. That is repeated in verse 6, verse 13, verse 19, and verse 28. That is the verse that again and again surfaces. And that is the message of Psalm 107. The emergency number from heaven is that you call out unto Jehovah, the God of Israel, in your distress, and he will lead you out of all your fears. So, there is a question of conscience. What are you going to do first? If there is fire in your house, if a family member loses his consciousness, if you are involved in an accident, what do you do first? Are you first calling the emergency number of the world, or do you first call the emergency number of heaven and call unto the God of Israel? Well, if you first call the emergency number of heaven and call on the God of Israel in the name of Yeshua, Jesus, then he will lead you out of all your fears and he will help you. Be blessed.